Good morning. Welcome in for topic 5.2. Okay. So what kind of formats might be used in the process, the performance appraisal process? And so we'll look at four different ways. So clearly there's a lot of other ways to do it. Some of these might be semi-familiar to us already, just presented in a different context. Okay. In one way, we could create graphic rating scales. Now, if you've been around psychology a little bit, we call these Likert scales. I don't know why they want to call them graphic rating scales, but they're just Likert scales, all right? We see them all the time. And so what we find is that these graphic rating scales are quick. You can just like, look at this. It's this employee, we're going to rate this person on the hypothetical construct of dependability. Step back a second. Remember we talked about hypothetical constructs in psychology, like happiness. How do you quantify happiness? Give me a cup of happiness. No. Give me a gram of happiness. No. It doesn't have a physical existence. So I could say to you, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the unhappiest you've been in your life and 10 being ecstatic, how happy are you right now? Okay. And you could, look inside yourself and kind of evaluate your level of happiness and then say 7. Okay. And so what I've now done is quantified a hypothetical construct in some way or another. Okay. Great. Well, that's what they're doing here in business, except now let's say the hypothetical construct is dependability. And so the manager or the rater will look at the employee and say, well, this person's dependability is below expectations, meets expectations, exceeds expectations. So these Likert scales or graphic rating scales are easy. You can use any construct. You could substitute dependability for reliability, for tardiness, for, quality of work produced, or just anything in the world. But of course, these are subject to bias. These are probably not, though you can do them quick. They are quick, they're easy, bing, bang, boom. But you find that if there's going to be if you're going to fire somebody based on a graphic rating scale, get ready for the court of law. How about that? Get ready to get sued. So a version, it's not a graphic rating scale, but it's in the same ballpark. We call them bars, behaviorally anchored rating scales. Imagine that what we have here is we've got anchors. The anchors are below expectations, meet expectations, exceeds expectations. That we call our anchors. However, these 3 anchors that I have written here are pretty vague. Okay, they're kind of broadly phrased. In a bar system, you've got these anchors, but the anchors are now based on, I still have the top and the bottom being good and bad, right? Just like on here, the far left and the far right is good and bad. But now I have given specific behaviors which might describe this type of rating. So a score of 2 or 3 is somebody that takes shortcuts. A score of 7 or 8 is somebody that is very conscientious about following procedures, something like this. I use a version of this bars when I create the, what do you call those things? The grading rubrics. The grading rubrics. In fact, if you look at the grading rubric here for our class, for the full paper, the grading rubric, you'll find, at different places, it's worth 10 points for this. And then you'll see this is what a 10 out of 10 would look like. This is what, and so instead of being a behavior, but if the paper looks like this, then it's 10. If it looks like this, it's a 7. And so it's a way to basically take advantage of the beauty that a graphic rating scale is in its ability to measure any construct, but to do it in a way which is often seen as more fair. However, these bars, okay, are really not easy to create. Okay, subject matter experts identify important performance dimensions. A second group creates behavioral examples. You go back. Basically, you can't just randomly make up these words, is essentially what I'm saying, okay? These behaviorally defined anchors need to be created by subject matter experts, need to be takes a lot of time and money. Very useful, however, very useful. As a behaviorist, I approve, okay? Checklists. Checklists are useful, but it's most prone to rater error. It's not probably a great idea per se, but weighted checklists. In fact, I'll come back to that. Forced choice checklists. Raters don't particularly like forced choice checklists because they feel like they lose control a little bit. But what might happen is there might be 4 items to describe an employee, and you pick the 2 that do the best job, something like that. And so sometimes raters don't like these. But weighted checklists, on the other hand, is a version of a checklist. But see, what happens here is you've got a weighted checklist for a computer CIS manager, something, I don't know. And so there's all of these behavioral descriptors. Does this item effectively manages backup a computer help system? Does this behavioral descriptor describe the employee being rated? If yes, put a check mark. Okay? And so at the end, you simply take each item that has a check mark and you add the scale score. So clearly at some point doesn't anticipate likely problems. If this item gets checked, it clearly you can end up with a negative score on one of these. Gotcha? Right? It's not all good. So it's perhaps a more better representation of an employee. Another one is interesting: employee comparison procedures. Basically, kind of like grading on a curve in a class, that you grade the employees compared to each other. Okay, and so perhaps the supervisor, manager, whatever, will rank the employees from best to worst. Okay, that's one potential method. Or do a head-to-head comparison. Take each person, X to Y, X to Z. Compare everyone and which one is better. Okay, and in that way, if you do a series of paired comparisons, ultimately a rank ordering will evolve, right? So it will give you a rank ordering in a more sophisticated way. Or you can force a distribution. If you recall the properties of the normal distribution, right? And remember, in this normal distribution, 68% fall within one standard deviation, and known percentages fall on different points. And so what we many companies do this, but it becomes problematic if, say, members of one particular group fall heavily into the lower categories. So it does have legal ramifications. Even if it is, quote, fair, it is often perceived as unfair by the people that receive it. Some other techniques or contemporary trends, right? Narrative comments. Supervisors and subordinates' comments are a lot clearer, are useful. I am not a fan. See, now, in fact, this was in topic 2, I think. There was a discussion of subjective data versus objective data. I like objective data. I'm biased that way. I'm an experimentalist. I'm a behaviorist. I don't like subjective data, okay? If you want to tell me your happiness, then put it on a scale of 1 to 10 and I feel good about it. But if you want to tell me some subjective, I feel like, oh, God, I can't touch that. I'm a scientist, dude. So I don't like narrative comments, but they have potential uses, okay? Feed forward interviews. Feed forward. And so basically focusing on employee strengths rather than weaknesses. And so this is, I'm sure, though I'm not totally, don't quote me on it, but I'm fairly positive that FFIs come out of the move towards positive psychology. Positive psychology is a newer, I want to say field or an area, but it's not. Orientation towards psychology, perhaps, is the best. Positive psychology focuses on the good part. See, for so many years, psychology has always focused on, like, abnormal, what's wrong, what's bad. And so instead of focusing on abnormal and bad, focusing on the good parts of humanity, the best parts. And that's kind of what this is, rather than, and I mean, this is related to basic learning theory. And children do not respond well to punishment. Children respond well to reinforcement. And so if you find ways to reinforce the good behavior rather than punish the bad behavior, and that's essentially what this is, because traditional performance appraisal focuses on employee weaknesses, and the notion is we should focus on their strengths. Okay? And so here we've got a nice little listing of advantages and disadvantages of different types of rating formats. All right, so I'll stop there and come back in, I'm sure, just a few minutes of my time, few minutes, your choice when you watch it, okay? So see you in a bit.